If you were to show this rosebud to your students, we know that for many, the instant reaction would be to make a comment or perhaps to ask questions. But if your students did create questions, would they know what to do to find the answers to those questions? Information literacy is the most important skill that we can share with our students. Not only for them as they're developing their learning, but for the adults that they're going to turn into. As teachers, we naturally follow this information literacy process, but I wonder for how many of us do we actually understand what information literacy necessarily actually means. Like, we know it, we do it, but do we know what it is? So when we're thinking about these questions and these ideas that our students create with the projects that we create for them, we support research processes. But do we understand that that's a information literacy skill? Not always. So let's really dive into what information literacy actually is. So the first thing I wanted to share was some good definitions of information literacy. So when we're thinking about how we explain it to our students, I wanted us to have a definition. So I used a couple of different websites, really explored it, because it was something that was brought up many times. So I explored a website called Scribr, which you can find the MLA 9 citation in my annotated bibliography, which will also include a link to this website. It's an amazing resource. It has a bunch of other stuff, not just this information on information literacy, but it really dives down into finding credible sources, what credible sources even mean, all those wonderful definitions and explanations that are so useful for our students. And they're pretty good for like something that you could build on or kind of like redefine for yourself. So that you could teach it to younger students as well if they are not able to access the vocabulary level that you think. Another website that I also explored was the Waterloo Region District School Board's site called Evaluating Sources, which was again a very useful website and really considered that idea as well of how to evaluate sources, obviously from the definition, but that being such a key part of information literacy, thinking about what sources we're using, it was a great source. And then I got another good definition that I used in my annotated bibliography, which you can find connected to this video, by Skyline College. So altogether, the idea is that information literacy is that skill that we use to find information, evaluate it, so consider, is it good, it's bad, do we need more, use them, and then communicate the learning that we gather. Additionally, you also want to be able to organize it. If you're bringing in all this information, you need to be able to organize this information before you can use it. So that's that idea of these are those key skills that are included in the overall skill of information literacy. So that was something that I really kind of found fascinating because, again, it's like idea of I know what information literacy is, but really thinking about what information literacy was very important. So that idea of finding, evaluating, organizing, using, and communicating information. And this can be done during school learning opportunities, during our activities in the LLC, but also out in the world, like, inspiring our students to, find the information that answers their questions. But obviously that first part as well is also understanding they might need to find information. And that leads into our why. So if we say what information literacy is, and that being those key skills, we want to think about why do we need those skills? Why do we need to know how to find information? And all of these, obviously, websites recognize that idea of, obviously, when we're doing research, we need to find information. But obviously Scribr and another article that I will refer to in a second have some really good information about, why it's important. And they consider the idea of, obviously, we have fake news, unfortunately, now in our social media world. It is very important for us all to be able to question and wonder and be able to find information that can either explain information that we've come across, can prove if it's true or false, and whether it is correct? Is it accurate? But also, and this is contained in the article by Krista Black, which again is referenced in my annotated bibliography, of teaching information literacy in an age of misinformation. Students obviously are taught from a very young age now that they do need to question everything, and but it's also they are exposed to so much information, and some of this information can kind of upset their core beliefs. So it's also recognizing that beyond just saying you have to, mistrust and always question everything that you read, it's also saying, and sometimes questioning it and exploring it is going to push you outside of your comfort zone. And that one was key. That was such a big piece of information, big piece of information, but a key point of learning for me was that idea of information literacy, not just being about how do we get information, but also how do we sometimes push ourselves out of our comfort zone to explore that information, even communicate that information. For me, doing this video is pushing me out of my comfort zone. So right there is that idea of information literacy is also about knowing that sometimes, you're going to find stuff that, maybe you don't want to know, but you still need to know. It's a question that you have to ask, or it's a piece of information that you need to consider. We sometimes need to push ourselves out of our bubble. And it's not about changing your whole mindset, but it's about being open. And I thought that was a key reason, and why it's so important to support our students in modeling information literacy skills, but also modeling that part of sometimes it's going to push us out and say, we've got to think beyond. Because as well, part of that is coming from us telling them they have to distrust everything. So they're like, I just don't want to do that anymore. And that is understandable, so we want to support them, but not make that pain where they're constantly having to question everything more, so information literacy is about supporting them in finding and evaluating that information without constantly saying you can't trust the information you found. It's about as well, just there's so much information out there, so many questions to answer. We want to find it all. So yeah, those were some reasons why. And then I found a couple of sources that obviously could help with the kind of how of how do we support so that we can model these things. And one that I really wanted to share with everybody is the Big Six. Okay, so again, this is in my annotated bibliography. It is also my key resources. So it is thebigsix.org, and this is a very cool website, and it also has the Super 3, which is aimed at younger students. So they're really cool, but it's basically a process model for students to solve that information problem. So when we think about the fact that they need to find information, they need to gather the information, they need to bring it in, they need to organize it, they need to use it, and they need to share it. And then they kind of need to reflect, is it all good? Did it do what it was supposed to do? Then the Big Six is really good for kind of your intermediate students and beyond. You want to start slow, even with your lower intermediates, but yeah, it's a great setup because it has that idea of task information, which I thought was a great phrase of going, what am I supposed to do? Do I need to find more information? If I've got a question, do I know the answer? Do I know it as thoroughly as I want to? What's the task here? What do I need to do? What do I want to do? Okay, and then we've got that idea of information seeking strategies. So that's where we can teach them and support them, and then they'll have this step that they know of, okay, where am I going to go for information? Am I going to just books? Am I going to websites? Am I going to databases? Am I going to social media? Because we have all this access to information, we want them to go and look for all the sources that are out there. You don't want to limit yourself immediately. We want to be encouraging them to go look for a variety. Okay. And then, obviously they need to they've thought about where they can go, then they have to go and locate it. Okay, not just locate the source, but locate the information within the source. So for me, I could put in, when I was, exploring this information literacy learning, I could just type in information literacy, but then I need to go and find what I need from it. So that's that next step. It's accessing the source and taking out what you need from it. And then your next step would be using the information. So how am I planning on sharing it? Obviously, in this case, I have shared this information in my annotated bibliography. I'm now sharing it on this video, which is getting quite long. I do apologize. Thank you so much for sticking with me. So you've got that information. So now you want to use it, and you want to use the specifics. So again, it's about looking at your notes and going, do I need to use all of this or just some of this? So even within all of this, I'm summarizing the key parts. This is one of the few where I'm really diving in deep because it was such a really cool resource, and I really want to explore that and share that. And then your next step would be synthesis, which, you might want to change that wording depending on, which is organizing your information and then presenting it. And then your evaluation. And this is that key part that I think a lot of our students probably will still be struggling with, because we kind of get that stage when we're younger of, well, I'm done. So it's that thinking of, okay, I'm done, now what? I think would be the way to be really thinking about it. And so teaching them to go, okay, I'm done. Has it done what I need it to do? Has it used the best information? Could I have used better? Really nailing that down and bringing it back. And then, like I said, this website was fantastic. It also simplifies these big steps into basically plan, do, review, which I think is fantastic for our younger students. Plan, and it connects it to what those would be in the big six. So the idea of planning connects to task definition and information seeking strategies. Do is getting the information, using the information, putting it all together. And then review is, getting them to ask, did I do what I was supposed to do? Do I feel okay about this? Should I do something else before I turn it in? Which is obviously the evaluation. So yeah, I really wanted to, that is how we can teach, these steps to our students. Now, within that, like I said, the evaluating sources from the Waterloo Region District School Board is also a great resource for us as the adults to possibly explore and possibly simplify for our students, being that they are intermediate and below. But for high school students, this would be a fantastic resource. It really gets to the core of evaluating sources and thinking about, are they good ones? Which is such a key part of information literacy. It connects into critical literacy as well. But if we're doing or seeking of information, we want to think about, is it good? And then again, Scribr was also great for thinking about those steps. It talks about, how to find sources and then defines that for students. It considers the idea of plagiarism. It gives you ideas of where to start with your research and asking yourself the simple idea of the evaluating. It has a great acronym, which the students will love because it is called, and I'm going to show you this. I apologize for the screen. It is called the CRAP test, which they will find hilarious, I'm sure. You, of course, could change this for your students to make sure it's relevant and, not offensive. But the idea of currency, relevance, authority, accuracy, and purpose. And again, a simplified way of getting our students to think about those sources, because once they're gathering this information, what we do want to teach them is it good information? But we also, like I said, within that now need to be aware of this pushback that some students are unfortunately going to maybe get when they're older. These were high school students that were referred to in that article that I mentioned by Krista Black. In that, they're high school, university, college level. So they've had many years of being told to question every piece of information. And now they're just kind of done with it. They want to be able to not question everything, or they're like, why should I believe you? I've been told 20 different times that that's not true, or so yeah, those were some of my key things that I wanted to share about my learning about information literacy. I hope that you have been able to learn some things, and yeah, I am very happy to have shared this with you. Thank you.